A meeting concludes and the hallway falls silent after a public correction lands like a slap. While it appeared to be about performance, the real damage was to pride and a sense of belonging. Most people do not view themselves as wrong, so criticism triggers defense and self-justification. When this occurs, logic loses its power, as emotions, prejudice, and status concerns begin to guide decisions. Teams become cautious, spouses grow distant, and small conflicts escalate into patterns that waste years. Influence is rarely about winning points. It is about creating a safe space where people can choose differently. Imagine a manager who starts every feedback session with faults, then wonders why effort remains minimal. Or consider a parent who lectures at dinner, then watches the room empty before any real conversation begins. The following ideas demonstrate how to replace friction with cooperation through appreciation, interest, and respectful persuasion. This video is inspired by Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Subscribe for more. Criticism often feels efficient, but it frequently produces the opposite result by pushing people into defense. A calmer approach is to ask what need or fear drove the behavior before deciding what to address. When someone feels attacked, they tend to search for excuses, leaving the real issue untouched and repeating. When someone feels understood, responsibility becomes easier because their dignity remains intact while the problem is named. In a workplace, a supervisor who scolds in public may get compliance but loses initiative and honesty. The same supervisor can ask for the story first, then set a clear expectation without humiliation. This shift supports smoother relationships by removing the urge to fight back. It also builds influence, as people cooperate more when they feel treated as adults, not targets. Pause before correcting anyone and ask which question would reveal motives, constraints, or misunderstanding. Then respond to the cause, not the ego, and the same conversation can turn into a workable agreement. People work harder when approval is real, as it shows their efforts are seen and valued. Sincere appreciation is specific and deserved, differing from flattery because it is not a tactic. Without appreciation, resentment builds quietly, causing people to do only what is required and nothing more. With appreciation, self-respect rises, and cooperation feels safer as recognition replaces suspicion. Consider a team where achievements are ignored while mistakes get constant attention in every meeting and email. Now picture the same team where small wins are celebrated openly and linked to clear reasons. This approach transforms human relations from pressure into partnership, the foundation for lasting influence. It also prevents unnecessary conflict, as people rarely fight those who consistently notice their good work. Choose one person today and state one concrete thing they did well, plus why it mattered. Make it brief and true, and watch how quickly the tone and effort change across the next week. Persuasion fails when it starts with your needs, as the other person only hears pressure and ignores the details. A better approach is to create an eager want by linking your request to their goals, worries, or identity. Arguments rarely change minds because they hurt pride, and injured pride seeks a counterattack. Respectful questions lower the tension and invite the other person to help solve the problem. Imagine negotiating a deadline where each side repeats demands, turning the conversation into a battle of certainty. Now imagine starting with their constraint, then asking what trade-offs would make cooperation possible without losing face. This method aligns with the goal of influence by treating people as partners, not obstacles. It also protects relationships, as agreements reached through dignity last longer than those reached through force. Before making any request, write one sentence naming what they likely want, and open the discussion there. If these influence tools help you build cooperation quickly, subscribe to keep practicing them in real situations. Goodwill is built through small signals that show the other person matters, not through impressive speeches. Interest works as a mechanism because attention is a scarce resource, and giving it feels like respect. A warm smile and a remembered name reduce social friction, making first meetings feel safer and easier. Deep listening also changes outcomes, as many conflicts shrink once someone feels heard without interruption. In a crowded office, a newcomer can be ignored or greeted with one honest question about their work. That simple choice often decides whether future requests feel welcome or intrusive, because belonging starts early. These habits support the larger thesis because influence begins with likability, and likability begins with respect. They also prevent needless resistance, as people rarely oppose someone who consistently treats them as important. Try a daily rule of learning one new name, repeating it once and asking one follow-up question. Pair that with listening that lasts 2 extra minutes, and relationships become easier to maintain over time. Correction fails when it feels like an order, as it threatens autonomy and turns cooperation into defiance. A better approach is to ask questions and offer suggestions, which allows others to maintain ownership of the solution. Direct blame often breeds resentment, whereas indirect guidance preserves dignity and leaves room for learning. Admitting your own mistakes first reduces defensiveness, as it shows fairness and lowers the status battle. Imagine a draft email filled with sharp edits sent back publicly, and notice how motivation immediately plummets. Now imagine the same feedback framed with one praise point, one gentle adjustment, and one question for options. This approach supports the larger goal of influence by changing behaviour while protecting relationships and pride. It also ensures that change sticks, as people act more consistently on plans they help design and verbalise. When you must correct someone, start with what is working, then suggest one improvement with a question. End by letting them choose the next step, and follow up later with encouragement for progress, not pressure. The core shift is moving from winning moments to building relationships where cooperation becomes the default. This shift treats pride and recognition as real forces that shape choices, even in practical conversations. Avoid criticism that triggers defense. Instead, use understanding to keep responsibility possible. Use appreciation, interest, and active listening to build goodwill. Then persuade by starting with what the other person wants. Over time, meetings become calmer, complaints become rarer, and feedback feels like support rather than a threat. At home, tension drops when respect replaces correction, and small courtesies rebuild warmth after long days. Start small by choosing one conversation today where you will not complain, argue, or issue orders. Instead, ask one question, give one sincere appreciation, and listen long enough to understand the real concern. These simple moves make future conversations easier because trust grows through repeated proof, not one performance. If building calm influence and better relationships matters to you, subscribe for more practical communication